Enda Walsh.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, my personal thanks to John Brereton of the Dublin Bowie Festival, who has asked me to have a chat with Enda. Not only have I always been a fan of David Bowie, I'm a fan of your work. That's as much psychophancy as I'm going to do tonight. We'll kind of move swiftly on. So in that catalogue, what did any albums spring to mind, or any particular songs?
I like sort of like low, but I mean my favourite song is Always Crash in the Same Car, which is sort of like when I talked to David about it, I was going, what do you like? What do you like? And I was going, what I really love, I love that fucking song too. You know, like it's a killer song. It's a great groove and and a terrific lyric. And and it's sort of like, you know, I don't know, it's very sort of simple, peaceful like that.
Would you say, objectively, around that time, which was probably around the time that you were developing your own career as a playwright and a writer, would any of his music have influenced or inspired those early works of yours, do you think? Or?
No, I don't think so. I mean, my early works, Disco Pigs, which I wrote down in Cork, was my first, was influenced by, well, down in Cork at that time in sort of 1996, there was a big sort of dance scene, and there was all the dance music, and we were just into dance music, so it was sort of largely that. But it's sort of weirdly, as you sort of write on particular sort of shows or whatever, like I wrote this really ridiculous version of Roald Dahl's The Twits a while ago, you know, which wasn't very good actually. But and no children should have been looking at it. But I based the rhythms of that on Kate Bush's The Dreaming album, of like particularly the drums on that album. So sometimes you end up, well, at least I end up sort of listening to music and they do sort of they begin to sort of affect the rhythm and the atmosphere of what you're trying to sort of write. So I'm sure now that, you know, like after whatever 2 years of listening to so much Bowie, like, and I'm wondering what's going to sort of come out, whether it's going to be like the really, really early 60s stuff or the later stuff. And like for 3 days we just sat around talking about stuff and and you know, but like it was, and themes, and I knew straight away that what we were going to make wasn't going to be sort of a piece of ABC narrative, some plot-driven thing that was going to be completely clean and accessible. And you know, he wanted to sort of reach and get sort of ideas and to be bold with the form of it, and to be, I suppose, really quite elliptical and a bit sort of obtuse with the sort of how it was going to sort of, you know, land in people's ears and eyes. And that really sort of
that connects in with your modus operandi anyway, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, sort of like, I always think that sort of theatre, and this, we talked about this a lot, you know, like that it was going, well, surely it was always like trying to pass narrative through the brain of a person and see what it comes out as. So you're pushing story that has sense, that has logic, that has real clarity to it. Or you're pushing it through a mind of a person who's gone mad, whose brain is sort of like, you know, collapsing in on itself. So, and then what does that come out as? You know, so and then it comes out the way it sort of comes out. So there was a lot of discussions of, let me think, The Singing Detective, which we both loved, Dennis Potter piece.
Yes.
You know, when you think about that, it's sort of like, it's not an easy, it's not an easy understand, but it's a very sort of interesting sort of world. But it was great to be sort of working with someone who, because I didn't want to, you know, I've written, you know, I've written stuff that, you know, sometimes, you know, it's very clean, and that's fine. But, you know, it was great to sort of go, oh, we're actually getting into the sort of the meat of it, and sort of getting lost in form, and also he didn't really care, you know, like how the hell the thing was going to be received, you know, which is great, you know, because I was a bit worried about it, like, God, I really hope we can push the shit out of it. But of course, it was his lead. He could do whatever the hell he wanted. It was quite sort of an imposing office to arrive into. It's sort of on the whatever floor in Lafayette, and sort of like a secret lift sort of carry on, and going up there and arriving into a completely grey corridor with a huge door at the end of it, with a ridiculous fucking door actually, which I told him, that's a really stupid door. It was about that wide, and it sort of opened up like that. And I thought, fucking hell, man. And he was, and all of it was sort of quite a bit, it was a bit like grey and stark, and I felt like, you know, like you were in a gallery, and I'm a bit chaotic. And but straight away, you know, like he was very sweet. He just gave me a big hug and he said, you know, you've been in my head for 3 weeks. You know, and I said, Jesus, you should try fucking living with it for fucking 49 years. It's a fucking disaster. But he was a it was immediately sweet, but it wasn't terrifying until I realized that he was serious about working with me. And then I felt like, oh God, this is it's a big thing to work with any collaborator, you know, like you want to sort of do the best with them and you want to sort of learn from them and all that type of thing. But you know, he's got such a extraordinary taste and such a brilliantly, such a brilliant, intelligent man, and has read everything. You know, and wasn't boastful about anything, but you know, you would suggest something, and you go, all right, then you go off, you know, to you know, in his office, there's this library of stuff, and pull out pictures and drawings and stuff like that, and fill the table and stuff, you know, like, and teach me crap.
Right.
You know, he was fantastic. Yeah, it's just really, really super ordinary, and I mean, he's enigmatic, you know, like, I mean, it was very. We got to the stage when we were writing it, and together, and you know, and he'd be suggesting, oh, let's do a song there, or you know, and I'd write a scene and we'd read it together on Skype, and then I'd be in New York and be reading it together, you know, like, and he'd go, you know, and then you know, and then he'd be picking guitar and playing songs, and I'd be going, this is quite weird. This is sort of like, and he was going, we're good. We should go out on the fucking road. I said, so good. He said, you're a good actor. I said, you're a good actor. And he was going, okay, I'll play Thomas Newton, you play all the other characters, because you're really good at the women. And, but it was funny, and I really loved all those sort of moments where it was like, I was like, all right, and I did laugh at that, and I was going, this is actually a bit weird, you know, having Dave Bowie sort of like play, you know, This Is Not America on guitar, sort of opposite you, and I was just going, it's a bit weird. Anyway, I better get back into character because I'm playing a woman any moment now, you know. It was a lot of that.
What was the work?
The first 4 days were really, really quite intense, and we covered a lot of ground in those 4 days. And at the end of, actually weirdly, at the end of the second day, he gave me all the songs, and he said, oh, so I'm going to give you all these songs. There's like 69 of them that I've chosen. So he says, will you decide what songs to use? And I went, seriously? And he went, yeah, because fuck, they mean so much to me, and you know, like, and da-da-da, and you know, like, you know, and it'd be great, like, just have a clear head on it, sort of narratively, and you know, all that sort of thing. And so that was incredibly generous thing to do, right? I mean, like, that's quite sort of big, but he was smart also about it, like, and of course, you know, like, I came up with these songs, and he was going, really? You like that? And I was going, because we talked a lot about, actually, okay, the song, a lot of the time his songs don't arrive sort of with any literalism, right? They're sort of lyrically, they're very sort of strange and all that type of thing, but they have feeling. They have real sort of like wallop and feeling and sense. And so I went through them with that, you know, so like, you know, so certain songs might land in, you know, like, but they have like in a narrative that we sort of constructed, but sort of like even changes, for example, you know, like sort of felt strange, you know, like where it was, but it felt sort of like emotionally correct. So it's sort of like that generosity that he sort of kicked off with that sort of continued, but at the same time we would reach sort of like moments where you go, nah, let's lose all that I've written, and they said, can I write a song instead? And then it was cool. It was sort of like he was going, I was so fucking excited about working on it. You know, I want to start writing material. And I was going, wow, Jesus, right, okay. So he'd send me, you know, it's quite. I know it's quite sort of scripted, but he'd send me sort of stuff, you know, that he recorded in his kitchen or whatever. I've just fucking done this, you know, like, and then, you know, like song, and And I thought, okay, and that's going to work its way into
Yeah.
the piece.
So David Bowie asked you, was it okay if he wrote a song?
Yeah, can I write a song? And then he also said, at one point he says, oh listen, do you have any lyrics for this, for No Plan? You know, and I said, are you fucking serious? And he's going, I don't know, like some, you know, like just to get me started. And I was going, damn it, please. I'm not going to go there. You know, because he was very, very good at looking at my work, you know, which was a hell of a fucking easy in fairness. And you know, like and suggesting sort of like cuts and or sort of rewrites and all that.
Right. Aside from the work, like, did you ever just down tools, so to speak, and just go for a beer or go for dinner, or was it always going to work?
It was mostly work, but we did have fun. It's got to be said. You know, it was a lot of sort of, you know, well, we're not big eaters. You know, we weren't, so a lot of looking at sandwiches and drinking tea, talking about stuff, and you know, it sounds really nerdy, looking at photographers and all that, but we did go to MoMA a couple of times together, and hung out there and had dinner there, and lunch there, and it was sweet. It was like, and only then did I realise, oh yeah, because, you know, men and women of a sort of certain age, I suppose, noticed him in his flat cap. You see, you put on this flat cap, and it was like sort of like some cloak of invisibility. Where is he? It was pretty quite weird. But when he took the flat cap off, like walking around, there were a couple of people who walking around MoMA who would stop and sort of like look like statues. And it was only then I was like, oh yeah. But he was fantastic. He was really into sort of German expressionism and stuff like that. Something that I don't know really a great deal about. But he was really good in about sort of talking about, and then he's the most unpretentious man, no ego, you know, like, but just loved art and loved making work. And I think what we sort of said before, man, I just loved working. Like, loved producing, loved sort of being around people who were excited about making something that doesn't exist. You know, reaching into some air and going, make something up. And you know, like, I mean, all of us, I mean, I'm very fortunate to be so surrounded by super creative people, you know, like, but, you know, he just worked with such extraordinary people, and was like Sam was this extraordinary catalyst.
Yeah.
He was a great collaborator.
Yeah. And you mentioned something earlier on when we were having a delicious all-day breakfast off Parnell Street. That he was kind of he was kind of,
He's a really cheap date.
yeah, I paid too, didn't I?
You did pay,
you really described the way he worked very well, I thought. He was like making a weather report.
Yeah, it was. No, we no, because we hit it off like really quick. We were going sort of discussing about the sort of work and well, I had sort of said to him, I said, Jesus, you know, I said, all we're doing is sort of constructing weather. You know, like a sort of like an, you know, it's all atmospheres and rhythms that sort of clash together. And you know, narrative, yeah, story, yeah, we can sort of tell sort of story. But I always think that sort of audience carry, and we talked about that a lot. You know, he was going, do you think it's possible to construct a sort of an hour and 45 minutes that feels like a song? You know, that doesn't sort of like that sort of, I don't know, avoids, you know, the literalism of something and goes somewhere else and sort of riffs off, you know, like, and I said, listen, we're passing a story through a mind that's falling apart. We can do fucking anything. Excuse my language, I'm really sorry. I actually am a little bit sick, so this is why I'm a bit loose-tongued, so I apologise to anyone who's going, why is he cursing all the time?
He apologises 25 minutes after he said his first fuck. So, you know, thanks, Enda.
He was very sweet. He says, yeah, we're basically making a fever dream. Isn't that what we're sort of doing? It's sort of like, it's this, you know, like when you dream, so it's the pieces connecting sort of, you know, but not fully. And it's just in that sort of state. And then we talked a lot about, I suppose, because we knew that what we were dealing with a man who effectively wanted to die in Lazarus. And very quickly, before I knew he was sick, you know, before he knew he was sick, we talked a lot about, you know, can we construct something? Can we sort of make a piece that feels like it's been infused with morphine? And you know, like, and that's really sort of, so it's quite trippy. It barely hangs together. It's a bit of a shitstorm, which isn't a curse. you know, like, but it's sort of like to make a good, proper piece of work. We could have done, but the thing was to do, sort of avoid that. Let's make something that is something else. That's a bit messier. That's scrappier. That's rough. You know.
Did you get a sense? And you mentioned earlier on that you know, he was always working on stuff, a kind of voracious appetite for work. Did you get a sense, maybe not at the beginning of working with him on Lazarus, but you know, through it, that he kind of just needed to get this finished because maybe he knew there wasn't that much time left, or did that come later?
I think at the beginning it wasn't there, but I think it came in maybe about sort of 4 months within sort of working. I was, well, I think he told me sort of in the spring. Well, he told me that he was working on a new album. I was like, wow, and so great. And then he was also as we were nearing the end of, well, as we were getting this thing, you know, like we were beginning to be happy with it. He says, what else are we going to do? You know, should we work on something else? Do you have any ideas? And what about doing a book? And you know, like, you know, where there's music sort of involved. And, you know, the guy is still, you know, thinking about stuff to do. But yeah, when I found out that he was working on sort of Black Star, and I think we were getting happy with where we were. I was thinking, I was aware that God, he's really working a lot. So
just that there was no intimation from anybody, least of all from him, that he was unwell.
No.
Okay.
Not at all. That came later.
Yeah. Well, maybe if we can talk about the later a bit. I mean, when did that become apparent to you? I presume he told you, or he told his.
Yeah, I think
we
sort of.
With?
Yeah, what we do? We open in New York, sort of like. Is it October 2015, something like that? Is that right? I'm sorry. But anyway.
Well, the opening in New York, I think, was
2014.
December 15.
December 15.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's right, because we're 17 now, aren't we? Okay. So it was that. And so, yeah, I think it was a good sort of like 10 months where he turned around, and 10 months before, this is where we did a workshop of it. We did this hilarious workshop of it, actually. I have to tell you about this. So, myself and David had written a version of it that was just so completely bonkers. We loved it. And David sort of like, we were in the, so Eva Van Hove was the director, this amazing director, was attached to it, because we wanted a different sensibility to ours, because we had a joint sensibility about what the piece was going to be. And then we agreed that actually we really needed someone who had a completely different aesthetic to what we had imagined, to really sort of, to counter all of that. And we were excited about that. But anyway, so we did a workshop of it, and Evo sort of did the workshop. The workshop for as a week as a reading of it. So we sort of read the script and sing the songs and la 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 la. And David, on the 2 days before the workshop, just called me and Evo in and Robert, and we were in the office and he wasn't there, and we were going, oh shit, where the fuck is he? And he came up on Skype, and I'm going, what are you doing on Skype? You know, you live across the road. And he said, listen, I'm sick. I've got cancer, and I just want to tell. I think if I go into the studio, into the rehearsal room for the workshop, the way I am, because first of all, the chemo, he had no hair. He said everyone's going to know, and I don't want him to get it out. So I'm going to have a camera in the room. So he was like the Wizard of Bloody Oz. We were pissing ourselves, and we told the actors, listen, David can't be here because he's got a cold. He's got, you know, like, and there was a camera in the room, and they were like obviously crapping their pants and singing his songs, and he would talk to the musical director Henry, hey, you know, like about, you know, like, can they do this and this and this, and he was there in his apartment sort of watching it, and but the piece was so abstract, what we had written. We loved it, we were like roaring laughing, but everyone else was going, we have no idea actually what this is about, and on the basis of that, we sort of went out again and rewrote it and sort of like and simplified it. For anyone who's seen it, we did actually sort of simplify it a little bit, you know. But from that, so we found out at that moment, so that was a good 10 months, I suppose, maybe 8 months, 9 months or something like that, before we opened, 7 months before we went into some proper rehearsal.
And that,
Yeah, well, his energy might have been down, but like he's so massively cool and straightforward. He was going, right, the conversation's done. This is going ahead. We've got a lot of work to do. We need to concentrate. And he was going through his sort of treatment, and at no point, and then I got, I went back. When I was in New York, I popped into the apartment to chat to him about stuff, and then I went back to London, and we sort of Skyped it sort of a few times. And at no point, he would have been probably into sort of making Black Star around that point, and at no point did we ever we had one discussion of it, and there was that.
right.
And then he would text me, or he would email me and go, oh, I'm feeling like crap, can we talk tomorrow?
Sure.
Or I would give him some ridiculously crazy, obtuse, crazy email about where I was at with the work, and he would say, I'm going to avoid that and answer it in 2 days. And then he would. What I did and what I understood, and first of all, we started writing a piece about a man who was dying. A lot of work about death and all that sort of thing. But the themes of Lazarus are about dying and what is death and sort of rebirth and all this, being born again, and what it must be like to be sort of David Bowie when you're going, are you truly dead? It's sort of like, I can't imagine what the hell it's like to have that sort of legacy and that sort of size of amount of work. So I felt as we were working on it, I felt that the piece became more and more personal. And obviously when I got sick, I thought, oh God, we're writing about this now. This is not, well, that's what he said at one point. He said, well, this is what we're writing about.
Yeah.
And it was, it became this, and that's, you see, I always found as strange and weird as those lyrics are, I always thought they were very personal. They mightn't have been sort of like, with words, but the feeling of them really sort of captured who he was, as a young man, as a man who was a little bit older as he was in that period, and living in such and such a city in Berlin or whatever it was in New York. He was really true to the moment. And I must say, with sort of Black Star, it became super personal.
Yeah.
Lyrically, it became sort of like personal. And so that was an extraordinary thing to be involved in, you work with many, many collaborators, and you get personal with one another because you want to get the best out of one another. But, to be working with someone and not having the discussions about, are you okay?
Was there any of that, or was it just?
Well, yeah, of course I would say.
Without it being intrusive,
how you're feeling, and all that type of thing, but not the sort of stuff that you would have like with a close mate, of like going, how are you dealing with sort of like dying? But you're having the conversation through the work, through the discussions, like we're writing, the last speech in Lazarus, and like a back and forth, and I'm going, this is a conversation about, like that, it's like, the whole of Lazarus for us was like, oh God, can you, at the last moments of your life, if you could imagine what those sort of like, those last 5 seconds are, and if you can construct, or if you can sort of elongate those 5 seconds into an hour and 45 minutes, and have that grief, and have that sort of fight, sort of like with yourself, the wanting to live, but wanting to die, wanting to sort of continue, but wanting rest. And I think that's actually sort of what we ended up making, and that's what we ended up having, that sort of silent conversation with one another, without it being, let's go down and have a pint and go, how the hell do you deal with the fact that you're going to be here in 3 months' time? And the opening night in New York, he came and of course, and it was very, and he was so sweet. He was like, took the bows and all the rest, and then went around to everyone in the theatre. It was so great. All this sort of, of course, not just the band and the cast, but you wanted to sort of like, have to go back into the stage management and the assistant stage managers and the ushers and the doorman, and he turned around and he says, have I thanked everyone? I said, David, you didn't, yeah, you thanked everyone. I went, okay, and he was sort of backstage, and he was sort of like, and at that stage, I talked to Ivo about it, and the director, and we sort of knew when he left the theatre, and so I said, I'll walk you, he was with a man, and I said, I'll walk both into the tiny little foyer, this tiny theatre, it's like hilarious. So we walked into this like foyer, and of course, then there was like, 80 people outside taking photographs, of course, and then I was like, of course, it's like David Bowie, I keep on forgetting it's David Bowie, of course it is. And he went, I'll see, I'll ring. And he went into the car, and I knew that was going to be the last time I would see him, because he was weak, and I just kind of had that sort of feeling. I thought, God, it's David Bowie there, and it was really, really emotional. It was really like, God, like I was very, very fortunate to know him, to get to know him and to become friends with him. And on Christmas Day, he sort of texted me and he said, "Oh, sorry, I haven't been in touch, and I'm really, really sick." And I said, "Yeah, don't worry about it. It's Happy Christmas." So, but I was amazed that he made it to Christmas, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like it's just the power of the, I think about, when people die and they've got big families and they wait for the children to arrive, and then they die. That's sort of, they sort of will themselves to live, and they make sure all the kids are in the same place, and then all the kids are, I'm off, I'm going to die. And it felt like that with Black Star. You felt like, actually he just needed to see it out. And that was there was such incredible, beautiful poetry to that. I mean, and it was so amazing to see the reaction. I mean, I don't know how the hell he would make it, but like just the sort of outpouring of like people going, well, there's a lot of fakery in the world, and a lot of duds, and a lot of people who are famous for just being famous. And then there's some great artists, and he's like a proper artist, and popular sort of artist, and it affected so many, and la. But to close it in that way that he closed it was just beautiful. And I think a lot of people might have reacted to that. They're going, "Oh, that's a really good death." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You should die like that. Not that we should all write #1 albums, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, will Lazarus ever make it? The stage play ever make it to Ireland? Do you think?
It's really, really, really expensive, and I think what's going to happen is like it will probably do. I mean, it's been invited to a lot of festivals, but you know what? We had such a fantastic, and Michael C. Hall is like an incredible actor and a killer singer, and I find it like I've worked on shows where you worked with other actors, and it's great, like different casts, and it's always very exciting. It's just something about Michael, and you feel like he's actually from another planet. He's the nicest, the shyest, one of the shyest people like I've ever met, and but he's got this energy about him, and myself and David just really loved him for that. David's going, he's an alien, he's a proper alien. It's fucking weird. You're an alien. I'm the only human.
Well then, that said, do you think it's something that could only happen once perfectly, and any other revisions of whatever it might be would be poor facsimiles?
Maybe. I mean, the thing has got sort of like an energy to it, and what I love about it is that it's quite chaotic, and it's quite sort of like, what? I love it, that it's difficult, that it's hard, that people are going, ugh, what's that? And some people are just going, crying their eyes out and adoring it and all that sort of thing. It's funny to see a sort of a commercial audience going to it. People like me, like who back in the day, like didn't know anything about David Bowie and only knew bloody Let's Dance, which we all love. And turning up and watching it and going, what is that? That's not Mamma Mia, and a show I love, I've got to be saying, but it isn't that. So I don't know. I mean, I would love to sort of see it. I think it's gonna be done in different languages. That's for sure. You know, because Bowie's like the world, right? So it's gonna be fun at some stage to see it in whatever, Japanese and Korean and la la la. You know, like I know there's stuff in Germany and France we can talk about.
Right.
So
And
that'll be interesting.
are you going to be involved in any way with any of those? Do you think? Do you want to?
No, I mean, like, in fairness, I mean, I wasn't sort of hugely involved in the London run. You know, like, my job was sort of done, and our job was sort of like to do what, you know, this is what we're going to offer, and you can make it. And really, I always think like being a playwright, you know, is like being a really bad lover. You completely invest in this thing. You love it to bits, and then you go, yeah, okay, I'm off. And it's awful. I do feel bad about it, but there's just other things to be made,
Right.
and all that type of thing. I talked to David about that, and it's true. You connect and you go into the work, and you are the work for a while, and then you go, well, first of all, David was a fantastic actor, and a lot of his, sort of, as you sort of said before, a lot of his work did feel as if he was acting, you know, but acting, but being him, not being fakery, but like being able to sort of like, you know, adapt into these sort of characters and be in that world and surround himself in a sound that's very sort of specific to that album, that he can just go, oh, okay, I'm done with that. That's done. And what sound now? You know, like, and all of that sort of stuff. So, you know, there's more work to be sort of made, but I mean, of course, I love the piece, and I'd love it to be sort of like done and blah, blah.